Greetings, trombonists at large. I am the Vagrant Trombone, here today to talk to you about mouthpiece rims. Hey, what do you know? So, let's get started. Mouthpiece rims, it's where the rubber hits the road, or where the grinder hits your soft and pliable flesh. Where the burger meets the road, I guess. But, yeah, mouthpieces. I talk about Bach mouthpieces just because I have a lot of Bach mouthpieces. But basically, the rim, top of the rim, we're going to talk about the rim. There are shapes of the rim. There is the outer circumference of the rim and the diameter. For the most part, I'm going to just talk about the diameter of the rim. There's the inner diameter and the outer diameter, which determines the rim width. Now, rims can be narrow, they can be medium, or they can be wide. We have a narrow rim, we have a medium rim, and we have a wide rim. Now, what does this mean? Actually, it goes this way, doesn't it? Wide rim. Well, for the most part, the rims are determined for tenor trombones, by the size of the blank. Now, when we talk about the blank, what's the blank? The blank is the outer contour of the mouthpiece. First, you take bar stock, right? You have long rods of brass. And the rods, when you purchase them, are different thicknesses. So in order to optimize the size, optimize money, and utilize the most brass, they try to get a rod that is closest to the outside diameter of the rim. In this case, this is a small bore tenor trombone mouthpiece. So a Bach tenor small bore mouthpiece. So what they do is when they make the blank, they cut from here up to here, and they take all of this rod stock off, so they just have the outer contour of the mouthpiece, and with an unfinished rim. And of course, there's nothing inside; it's blank. So when you get these measurements, all of these, they make hundreds of them, maybe thousands, and they will all be the same dimension on the outside. This is an 11C. Here is an 8.5 BW. They are the same size. Here is a 9. They are the same size. All of the tenor trombone blanks, small bore tenor trombone blanks, are the same size. But large bore tenor trombone blanks, they are slightly bigger. And that's because they need to accommodate wider rims, because they're going to make bass trombones on this exact same blank. The blank is slightly larger, and that allows them to make slightly bigger rims. It also means that the mouthpiece is going to cost more, because they have to cut away more material to make that mouthpiece. But for the rim, for the most part, a standard rim is like an 11C. The 11C mouthpiece has a pretty standard, what we'd refer to as a medium rim. Now, when you have rims that are narrow, one of the reasons why the rims are narrow is because the blank that originally cut that rim was one of these. And so if you get like a 60 Schilke or a 1G, it's going to have a really narrow rim. It's only because they didn't want to use larger stock to make the mouthpiece blank. I had a custom mouthpiece made once, and I wanted a wider rim on it. I was playing a 1 1/4 G, and I wanted a wider rim. So in order to get the wider rim, I had the mouthpiece manufacturer use a contrabass mouthpiece blank, which he was really unhappy to do, because he didn't like spending the money on turning contrabass mouthpiece blanks. But it made the rim nice and wide, so it was much more comfortable for me to play long periods of time. Now, the tenor trombone mouthpieces, the advantages to a narrow rim, a medium rim, or a wide rim. These can be, let me see, is this a narrow? Yeah, that's a little one. So you can see they're a little bigger than a standard tenor trombone mouthpiece. So an 11C has about a medium width rim. Now with rims, the width of the rim is different than the diameter. When you have the diameter of the rim, the diameter can be as large or as small as like an 11C or this bass trombone, which is a 112. But the idea of medium will always remain the same. That is not true when you're dealing with the cup. The diameter of the rim will determine where medium depth is. We have a different formula to triangulate the depth of the cup than the rim. The rim sits on your face. Medium is always going to be medium. But the larger diameter across the mouthpiece rim, the deeper your cup is going to be, while that cup depth is still referred to as a medium depth. So that's one of the curiosities. Now, when you have a narrow rims are great for playing quickly. Flexibility is really good on a narrow rim. You can get a lot of flexibility out of that rim. A wide rim, they're a little harder to get around on. When I started playing on wide rims on my bass trombone mouthpieces, I felt like it was isolating too much of my face, and I was having a hard time remaining flexible. It did really help with endurance over time because I was playing a lot in the higher register. When I played a lot of classical music, a narrow rim worked fine because the horn wasn't really on my face that much, even though I might be popping out a high A once in a while, in some literature. But for the most part, the narrow rim worked fine. But when I started playing in big bands, doing 3-hour gigs, and a lot of times I was playing in the higher register above the staff, I needed more support just for the comfort aspect, because the narrow rim starts to kind of cut into my face. I'd see a big red ring around my lips. That wasn't good. I was using too much pressure. So the larger rim, the wider rim, allowed me to kind of distribute more pressure of the mouthpiece of the horn. So I had better endurance over time. I wasn't getting flame out in the upper register, which I would get over time if I was playing a lot on a narrow rim. But the flexibility suffered, and a bit of tone loss too. And it felt like I just couldn't get enough face vibrating, even though the bite on these rims is very much the same. Now, with the rim, we have a couple of features about a rim. We have the rim contour, which is the crown of the rim, the top of the rim. Like I said, when they make a blank, it's just a blank mouthpiece. Then they cut the inside, they put the back bore in, and then they contour the rim. And when they go to do that, that's the crown. They crown the rim. They place the crown on the rim, and the crown's contour starts on the outside of the rim and comes to the inside over the high point, rolls off into the bite, and then ends. That's all that there is on a rim. The outside crown over the face of the contour, the high point, rolling off into the bite, and that's where the mouthpiece ends. When you take a dimension on the inside of the mouthpiece, you want that zone right where the contour rolls off into the bite, and the bite then transitions into the inside of the cup. Right at that point, that's where you take your measurement for the inside diameter of your mouthpiece. All of these dimensions have an effect on how your face feels that mouthpiece. I have this 8BW here. It's got an odd shaped rim. You can see that the rim is very rounded on the outside and then rather flat to the high point, which is right before the roll-off into the bite. The bite is the area right where the mouthpiece comes over the flat and then rolls off. That is the bite. The bite can be longer or the bite can be shorter depending on how sharp that angle is going into the mouthpiece. What's odd about this is the high point of the rim isn't toward the outside. It's right before you roll off into the bite. So even though the mouthpiece has this big wide rim, it still kind of frees up the outside of my face. Now with the bass trombone wide rim, it's very flat. And the high point is actually across this section toward the outside. And it's interesting because not only is this rim fatter, but it also feels a little wider because the high point is toward the outside away from the bite, even though the bite feels very secure. I had a couple of these wide rims, and this one has the bite. This one has the high point toward the outside on the crown of the rim. And that made the mouthpiece feel a little more comfortable, but it also made it feel a little more vague for placing the bite for consistent articulation. When you have a mouthpiece that the bite is too rounded or the high point is too far to the outside, it feels vague on the face. And to be precise, especially if you're playing high notes on tenor trombone, you want to have a more precise feel on your face. You want to have that position of the mouthpiece always in the same place so that you can get a consistent placement and be able to develop consistent attack, consistent tone, consistent sostenuto, and consistent flexibility. All those things will be affected if your mouthpiece roll-off is too smooth. I find 6.5 AL mouthpieces, the newer ones. The older ones are different. They have more bite. But the newer ones have more of a relief on the rim. The rim is more rounded and then comes into the bite, and the bite is taller. And so it just feels vague on my face, and I have a problem with that. I prefer a mouthpiece with more bite. Now you can see this rim from top to bottom, like a standard tenor trombone rim, is about that big. Now you also have relief rims that are thinner from the top of the rim to the underside before you roll off into the outer contour. With those mouthpieces, I find that when the rim is too thin, it just doesn't seem to feel as stable on my face. I played this mouthpiece for a long time, but it just never really felt stable, even though it has a pretty good bite on it, and the diameter is about a medium. So when the bite can be important, but if the bite is too sharp, for some people, it really cuts in. And different people will have different experiences. Your mileage may vary on your rim, where the rubber meets the road, because everyone's face is a little different. My gums come down, and then my teeth are kind of rounded. So when I play on a very flat rim, they actually feel kind of sharp because there's not a lot of support above my teeth because of the shape of the front of my teeth. Also, if the rim is too wide, like on bass trombone rims, if I get much bigger than a 114, any bigger than a 114, these eye teeth start to cut into my lip. So I have kind of a flat zone here across the face of my teeth where this rim really fits well. And so that is a comfortable rim for me. I actually play on medium rim. And I went through a couple of medium rims till I found one that I liked. And this one, again, the high point is pretty much in the middle. And so it actually feels larger than the narrow rim, even though they are exactly the same diameter on the inside at the bite. So the bite is the same, but the high point where it starts to round off is a little closer to the middle of the face of the rim, which makes the rim feel a little bigger, a little more comfortable for me, and I still have a good bite, so I get consistent placement on my chops. And I find that gives me the most optimal flexibility. Now, I find, again, that the weight of the rim can affect the sound of the playing of the horn and my stability. The wider rim, I actually really liked it because it's heavy, and it really felt like it kept the mouthpiece from vibrating around. I have this very lightweight jet tone mouthpiece. It has a nice size rim, but the material is so light, it feels like it's literally moving around on my face if I'm playing high and loud. It's a little disconcerting. Same thing with the relief rim. I find that the relief rim is just, I don't feel enough weight there supporting my chops. And so that's why I prefer a standard 11C rim or medium rim on this mouthpiece. Now this, as I said, is an 8.5 BW. That does not stand for Bill Watrous. It just means that the 8.5 is the size across the diameter of the face. The B is for the shape of the cup, and the W is for the wide rim. This mouthpiece has a maximum rim diameter on the outside circumference, the outside diameter of the rim, circumference diameter. So what does that do? It gives more support to the outside of the face, and I didn't feel that it isolated as much of my face as the bass trombone rim, just because the contour kind of fades out. It fades this way instead of being up and flat and down. I didn't need this mouthpiece. I got this mouthpiece in a case. I bought a horn and it happened to be inside of there. And so, yeah, it's kind of a novelty for me to have. But that's basically what there is to say about mouthpiece rims. The width of the rim will aid in flexibility. It'll also, the wider rims aid in endurance because you've got more surface area, not getting ground up by any back pressure, which you need back pressure enough to keep a tight seal. You don't want to use back pressure to aid in isolating your chops to get a thinner buzz. If you push too hard, you can end up with neural damage. You don't want that. And the width of the diameter of the rim will affect your endurance. If the rim is too wide, you're going to have to be stronger to play on that. But these things are determined by the comfort of the zone of your mouth, of your teeth. If I play on an 11C, the 11C diameter is about as small as I can go before I start feeling the bite of the rim on the pink part of my lip. I want that bite to be on the edge of the pink part, not on it. I don't want that mouthpiece rim to sit on my lip. I want my lips to fit inside the diameter of the rim. So if you have a larger head, I know guys that are just bigger people, they can play on much bigger equipment, and still with no loss of endurance or sound in the upper register. I used to play on larger equipment when I was a younger man. I didn't play as much lead. And so actually the mouthpiece I really like is this Bach 9 mouthpiece. I find the diameter very comfortable. It's a little deep for tenor trombone, although it's a nice warm sound. This is my euphonium mouthpiece. I used to play that on my old euphonium. And that's how I ended up with that. But I also have a Dennis Wick, which I don't have it here, but I have a Dennis Wick large bore euphonium mouthpiece, which is about the same size as the 9, almost a 6. I used to use a 6 for a long time, not a 6C, just a straight 6, for a long time on euphonium as well. But and so I wanted to play larger equipment on my tenor trombone, but over the years, I'm getting old. So I've moved to smaller equipment. I find myself playing a lot of lead too. So I find the 11C just works better for me. But the 11C really is about as small as I can go before I start getting too close to the edge of my lip. So you want that rim you want your lips to comfortably fit inside the rim. You want the width of that rim to comfortably cover your lips so that you can get a tight seal without using too much back pressure. That was another problem with using a narrow rim. I felt like I would have to use more back pressure to create a seal in the upper register, which made me feel like I was using too much pressure. That was one of the nice things about the wide rim. It seemed to create more of a seal because there was more surface area for me to seal with. I find the medium rim works just fine. So the medium rim on a standard tenor trombone, small bore tenor trombone mouthpiece seems to work really well for me. But the contour of that rim is also important. A rim that is more rounded can, with a sharper high point, can be more enduring. You're going to feel more pressure. It may feel more comfortable when you first touch it to your face, but it's going to, the high point on the outside, not only is it vague, a little on the vague side, when the high point is toward the outside, it's all a little vague, but also it's going to create more pressure in the middle, and you're going to not have as much endurance. Too much bite on a mouthpiece can make it feel like it's cutting into your face too, where your teeth are going to be pressing against your lip, with your lip sandwiched in between the edge of the bite. You can get cuts. And not cuts, well, I guess you could, but you can get pressure points, hot spots that you want to try to avoid, because if you keep playing on those hot spots, you'll start developing scar tissue. And that can be a detriment because scar tissue doesn't like to vibrate. So you've got to try to manage all of this while keeping a good seal without using too much back pressure. Some people say you shouldn't use any back pressure. You got to use a little back pressure just to get the seal. And what you don't want to do is rely on back pressure to be able to get those higher notes. So I find that a mouthpiece with a medium high point, fairly flat, but a medium high point with a medium kind of bite, or the Mount Vernon versions of Bach mouthpieces had a little more bite. Sometimes I think that's a little too much, but some of the newer mouthpieces, they're so round, again, it feels vague. And for me, what I've discovered is if I'm playing high or have to be articulate, I need to know that mouthpiece is in the same spot every time. Otherwise, that Otherwise, just a little bit of shift makes it harder for me to be precise when I'm playing in the upper register. Well, I don't know if this is just rambling like madness, but that's pretty much what I know about mouthpiece rims. I could tell you more, but I think it would be a waste of air, and you don't want to sit through that now, do you? Okay, well, maybe next time we'll talk about cups and backboards, but I don't really know. The other video I made about the 11C mouthpiece I felt was a little too specific. Not enough general information for people who might be looking for something more comfortable. So I hope you found this interesting, and until next time, maybe I'll see you on the bandstand.